You are standing over a mountain of bloody mammoth meat. The smell of death is rising fast, and you know the cave lions are already catching the scent. You don't have a freezer, you don't have a plastic container, and you don't even have a single handful of salt to save yourself. For 99% of human history, figuring out how to hide this massive pile of meat before it rots or gets you killed was the ultimate puzzle of survival. If you failed this test, your entire tribe would starve to death before the brutal winter even began. Modern humans simply open a glowing white door in their kitchen to keep their food perfectly fresh for weeks without a second thought. But for hundreds of thousands of years, the very concept of leftovers was not a convenience. It was a highly dangerous and heavy liability. Imagine successfully hunting a giant woolly mammoth. This single massive beast could provide over 3 tons of raw, nutrient-dense meat for your people. That is millions of calories. But your small tribe of 20 people cannot physically eat 3 tons of meat in a single day. As soon as the animal falls, a terrifying biological countdown begins. Bacteria immediately start breaking down the flesh, turning it into toxic poison. At the same time, the strong metallic scent of fresh blood travels miles across the frozen tundra, acting like an alarm bell for predators. Giant short-faced bears, dire wolves, and packs of hungry hyenas are instantly drawn to your location, looking for a free and easy meal. You cannot simply leave the meat out in the snow. If it freezes completely solid, your primitive stone tools won't be able to cut it. And if a sudden warm spell hits the region, the entire pile of food will quickly rot into a putrid, maggot-filled nightmare. So, what did our ancient ancestors actually do? They didn't just abandon their hard-earned catch. They engineered nature's very own chemical refrigerators. To understand this bizarre prehistoric technology, we have to look closely at a rather disgusting, but absolutely brilliant survival strategy they used. According to research by paleontologist Daniel Fisher on North American mastodon sites, early hunters didn't just leave their kills lying in the snow. Fisher discovered something completely unexpected dating back over 10,000 years, CN Verify. Ancient humans were intentionally hiding massive meat chunks underwater. Why underwater? Because they were building nature's very own refrigerators. They dragged heavy parts of animal carcasses into freezing, shallow, muddy ponds. Let's reconstruct this process. You and your tribe have just spent days tracking a massive beast. Finally, it falls to your spears. You quickly butcher the animal before scavengers arrive. But instead of carrying it all back to your dry, warm cave, you do something strange. You drag the heaviest, most valuable chunks of flesh directly into a nearby freezing bog, wading deep into the muddy, oxygen-poor water. To keep the meat from floating up or being stolen by swimming predators, you pile heavy stones and animal intestines on top. Now it is safely weighed down at the bottom of the pond. To a modern mind, putting fresh meat in dirty mud sounds crazy. You would assume the swamp water would instantly contaminate the food, making it deadly to eat. But here is the bizarre twist. You weren't just freezing the meat down there in the dark. Without even knowing what microbiology was, you were actively fermenting your precious food. In those cold, oxygen-deprived ponds, a very specific type of microscopic algae took over. Lactobacilli, exactly the same helpful bacteria used today. Yes, the exact same bacteria that modern humans use to make yogurt, cheese, and pickles naturally colonized the submerged mammoth meat in the mud. These friendly bacteria produced a thick layer of lactic acid. This acid acted as a magical protective shield, turning the meat highly acidic. This high acidity created an incredibly hostile environment for the deadly, rotting bacteria that usually destroy meat and cause fatal food poisoning. Your ancestors essentially created a prehistoric, sour meat cheese. It smelled absolutely horrific, but this genius chemistry kept you alive through the brutal winter. But what if you didn't live near a freezing bog? For tribes living in dry or rocky regions, another brilliant chemical solution was required. You realize that bacteria need one specific thing to thrive and multiply on your mammoth meat: water. Moisture is the enemy of preservation. To defeat the rot, you must remove the water. You take a sharp stone flake and begin slicing the meat into incredibly thin strips. You hang these thin, bloody strips over tree branches, letting the harsh sun and dry wind slowly suck the moisture out of the flesh. However, this creates a new deadly problem. The smell of exposed, drying meat quickly attracts massive swarms of flies, maggots, and crawling insects. To save your food from bugs, you bring the meat inside the cave and hang it directly high above your roaring campfire. Without realizing it, you just invented smoking. The thick smoke rising from the fire is packed with complex chemical compounds like formaldehyde and phenols. These chemicals act as an invisible, toxic armor. They coat the meat, completely stopping insect infestations and preventing toxic mold from growing. You have successfully engineered prehistoric jerky. It is tough as leather, hard to chew, but it is a lightweight, calorie-dense survival ration. Weeks pass. The brutal ice age winter finally hits. The landscape outside turns into a frozen, dead wasteland with absolutely nothing left to hunt. While other animals starve to death in the snow, you are sitting safely by the fire, slowly chewing your dried, preserved meat. You think you have outsmarted nature. You have successfully hoarded enough calories to survive the entire dark season without ever leaving the cave. But there is a fatal flaw in your plan. You are not the only creature desperately looking for calories in this frozen wasteland. The concentrated smell of hundreds of pounds of smoked jerky acts like a giant, invisible beacon for the most dangerous predators on Earth. A massive, starving cave bear suddenly blocks the entrance to your home. You now have to fight to the death to protect your prehistoric refrigerator. You don't just use your spear. You grab a burning branch from the campfire and thrust it directly at the massive beast's face. The cave bear, terrified of the searing flames, finally backs away into the dark night. You survive, but your heart is pounding out of your chest. You suddenly realize the true cost of having prehistoric leftovers. Preserving massive amounts of food doesn't just mean you get to eat later. It means you have turned your own home into a giant, smelly target for every desperate, starving predator in the icy wasteland. For the next 4 months of brutal winter, you must constantly guard your precious stash. You sleep with one eye open, gripping your weapon. As the blizzard rages outside, the giant pile of jerky slowly shrinks. You are forced to severely ration every single bite of that smoked meat. This relentless, terrifying cycle of feasting and then facing months of near starvation fundamentally rewires the architecture of the human brain. The fear of losing your calories becomes deeply embedded in your DNA. Your body learns to obsess over storing food, both outside and inside your body. Fast forward 300,000 years. The Ice Age is over. You are no longer living in a cave, and the cave bears are entirely extinct. But that exact same prehistoric brain, utterly terrified of starvation, is the one you carry with you when you walk into a brightly lit modern supermarket. This creates a psychological phenomenon known as an evolutionary mismatch. Your ancient survival instincts are suddenly placed into an environment of endless, effortless abundance. Imagine yourself waking up at 2 in the morning today. You wander into your kitchen, feeling a completely irrational urge to check your food supply. You open the glowing door of your modern refrigerator. You stare blankly at shelves packed tightly with perfectly fresh food, safe from any predators. You are not actually hungry. Your body has plenty of calories. But you still feel an odd, nagging anxiety to eat something immediately. Or perhaps you feel a sudden guilt when you see a yogurt cup about to expire. Throwing away food triggers an ancient, deep-seated panic. Because your brain is still wired for the Ice Age, absolutely terrified of losing any precious calories to decay, freezing, or predators. But the muddy bog and the smoky cave weren't your only refrigerators. You actually carried another, much more advanced storage system everywhere. The most efficient, reliable, and life-saving food storage technology ever invented by nature is actually located right inside your own physical body. It is your body fat. To modern humans living in abundance, excess body fat is often treated as a terrible, unwanted enemy. But for 99% of human history, the ability to gain fat was an incredible biological superpower. It was an internal battery. When you finally gorged on that mammoth meat, your body didn't just burn all of those calories for immediate daily energy to walk. Instead, a powerful hormone called insulin acted exactly like a frantic prehistoric hoarder, desperately packing away every single extra calorie it could find. It converted those calories into dense lipid droplets, locking them safely inside specialized fat cells located deeply around your waist and internal organs. Why? Because your brilliant biology knew that the frozen, snowy wasteland outside would soon offer absolutely nothing else to eat for many long months. During those brutal winter months when the dried mammoth meat finally ran out, your body smoothly switched its internal fuel source to survive. It slowly unlocked those stored fat cells, using them to keep your heart beating and your brain functioning while you essentially starved. If you lacked the genetic ability to store fat efficiently, you would have simply died in your sleep during the very first winter. Now, return to that brightly lit modern supermarket. You are constantly surrounded by cheap, easily accessible, hyper-processed sugars and artificial fats every single day. Your ancient brain sees a sweet pastry and instantly screams, "Eat this right now. Winter is coming and we need to survive." So you eat it. Your insulin immediately spikes, hoarding those massive calories and preparing your body for a brutal famine that never arrives. What kept your ancestors alive through the harshest ice age is now quietly killing you in the form of modern obesity and metabolic diseases. Your greatest biological superpower has officially become a modern curse, simply because the environment changed far faster than your DNA could ever adapt. But let's jump back to the Ice Age. You face a new, terrifying problem. The mammoth herds are migrating, and you must follow. You have to leave your home. But you obviously cannot drag a muddy pond or a heavy cave full of jerky across the tundra. If you leave your massive meat stash behind, you will starve on the journey. If you stay, you will eventually freeze to death. To survive as a nomadic hunter-gatherer, your ancestors had to invent a new technology, the world's very first portable, non-spoiling energy bar. You take the dried, incredibly tough jerky you smoked earlier. Using heavy flat stones, you smash the meat over and over into a fine powder. But pure dried meat lacks one crucial thing: fat. Eating only lean meat in winter can lead to a deadly condition called protein poisoning. Also known as rabbit starvation, this happens when your body burns more energy digesting lean protein than it actually absorbs, causing fatal malnutrition. To solve this, you gather the heavy leg bones of the mammoth. You shatter them with rocks to extract the rich, calorie-dense bone marrow. You melt this marrow over the roaring campfire until it becomes a thick, liquid fat and pour it directly over your powdered dry meat. You mix in handfuls of tart, dried berries to preserve it further. Then, you pack this greasy paste tightly into a waterproof leather pouch. You have just created a primitive version of pemmican. This bizarre, high-fat mixture is perfectly preserved and will literally last for years without rotting. It is the ultimate prehistoric survival ration. A single handful contains enough concentrated calories to keep you hiking through the snow all day. With this portable, non-spoiling food source strapped tightly to your waist, you and your tribe finally step out into the blinding, freezing winter. As you march through the endless white wasteland, that small pouch of pemmican is the only thing keeping your heart beating. But you aren't just wandering aimlessly. You are navigating towards the third and most reliable prehistoric refrigerator ever used by our ancestors. Before the heavy snows fell, your tribe strategically buried excess meat deep underground across the landscape. This is the permafrost deep freezer. Permafrost is a thick layer of soil that remains completely frozen all year round. It acts as nature's ultimate walk-in freezer. But finding a specific hole in the ground during a blinding whiteout blizzard is a nearly impossible challenge for a modern mind. You rely entirely on an ancient, highly evolved mental map, using distant mountain peaks and massive boulders as your natural GPS. Finally, you spot your stone marker. You fall to your knees and begin digging frantically through the thick ice and frozen soil. But as you uncover the cache, your heart drops in terror. The heavy stones protecting the meat have been violently shoved aside. A pack of hungry scavengers found your deep freezer first. Half of your precious, life-saving calories are completely gone and stolen. The remaining meat is heavily gnawed, covered in dirt, and frozen solid. You do not have the luxury of feeling disgust. You immediately start chewing on the frozen, raw, dirty scraps. You don't even bother trying to build a fire to cook it. If a modern human ate this dirty, half-scavenged raw meat, they would end up in a hospital. So why didn't you die? Here is a bizarre biological fact. Your stomach acid today is incredibly strong, with a highly corrosive pH level of around 1.5. This makes human stomach acid vastly more acidic than most primates. We are on the exact same digestive level as carrion-eating vultures. Evolution gave you this highly acidic stomach specifically so you could safely eat dirty, aging meat from your prehistoric refrigerators without dying. Armed with your highly acidic, vulture-like stomach, you managed to digest the dirty, frozen scraps without contracting a fatal bacterial infection. You spend the final grueling weeks of winter huddling inside the dark cave, gnawing on whatever frozen bones and tough pemmican you have left. Your internal battery, your body fat, is now completely depleted. You have lost a massive amount of weight, running purely on fumes. Every single day is a grueling test of endurance. You are literally starving, but your prehistoric food preservation techniques have bought you time. And then, one morning, you notice something different. The howling wind outside stops. The temperature inside the dark cave slightly rises. You step outside into the blinding light. The thick ice covering the tundra is finally beginning to crack and melt under the sun. Tiny green shoots of fresh grass are breaking through the thawing mud. The brutal, endless winter of the Ice Age is finally breaking. In the distance, you hear the triumphant sound of mammoth herds returning. Fresh, moving calories are migrating back into your hunting grounds. You have survived. You beat nature at its own deadly game. But you didn't do it with sharp claws or thick fur. You survived because of human ingenuity. You engineered chemical preservation in oxygen-deprived mud, harnessing friendly bacteria to protect your mammoth meat. You mastered the invisible armor of wood smoke, using complex chemical compounds to repel flies, maggots, and toxic mold from your food. You invented the world's first portable energy bar by smashing dry meat and mixing it with hot liquid bone marrow and tart berries. And you utilized the frozen earth itself, turning the permafrost into a massive walk-in deep freezer to cache your heavy winter supplies. However, your prehistoric brain never actually relaxes. It remembers the agonizing hunger and fear of those dark months with perfect, terrifying clarity. It passes that deep, lingering survival anxiety down through thousands of generations, hardwiring the ultimate fear of starvation directly into human DNA forever. Which brings us back to you tonight, standing barefoot in your modern kitchen, illuminated only by the faint glow of the clock. You pull the handle of your modern refrigerator, bathing your face in the cold, bright light of absolute, guaranteed food security. You just ate a massive, calorie-dense dinner less than 2 hours ago. You are not physically hungry. So why are you here? Because your ancient brain does not know what year it is. It is still operating entirely on the brutal timeline of the Pleistocene era. To your deeply ingrained survival instincts, this humming metal box is not an appliance. It is the ultimate, magical permafrost cache. When you stand there staring blankly at the packed shelves, you aren't actually looking for a physical meal to eat right in this moment. Instead, your nervous system is subconsciously taking a visual inventory of your survival resources, ensuring the tribe's safety against the coming winter. Your brain rewards you with a tiny, comforting hit of dopamine simply for verifying that the precious calories have not rotted or vanished. That is exactly why you can open the fridge, stare mindlessly for 10 seconds, and close it again without taking a single thing. You just successfully reassured your terrified inner caveman that the invisible pack of scavenging hyenas hasn't completely stolen your winter supply tonight. But the modern world sets a dangerous trap. As you close the door, your eyes catch a highly processed, sugary dessert sitting on the counter. Your primitive brain instantly lights up and screams at you to consume the rare sugar and fat immediately before it spoils or disappears. During the Ice Age, walking past a bush of sweet berries or a chunk of fat without eating it was a fatal evolutionary mistake. Today, giving in to that exact same ancient instinct every single night is ironically the very thing that is slowly destroying your health. Your biology is frantically packing away emergency energy, desperately preparing your body for a brutal freezing famine that has been permanently canceled. So, the next time you look at that humming white box in your kitchen, realize it is not just a simple household appliance. It is the absolute pinnacle of human survival. It represents 300,000 years of starvation, freezing winters, and sheer willpower. Your ancient ancestors conquered the deadly rotting bacteria by utilizing the freezing mud and engineering complex lactic acid shields. They conquered the freezing cold and the lack of winter game by inventing portable pemmican and digging deep permafrost caches. They even fought off the massive cave bears and starving hyenas just to protect the few calories they had left. But the one final predator that humanity has not yet figured out how to conquer is our own deeply ingrained survival instincts. So tonight, when you inevitably wander back into the kitchen at 2 in the morning for no logical reason at all, do not feel guilty for opening that door and staring blankly into the cold, bright light of the refrigerator shelves. It is just your inner caveman doing its job, making absolutely sure that your tribe will survive for one more day. You are standing in the glowing light of your kitchen. The smell of death is gone, replaced by perfect, endless freshness. You know for a fact that there are no cave lions catching the scent, waiting to ambush you in the dark living room. You finally have a freezer, you have endless plastic containers, and you have more salt than an entire prehistoric tribe could imagine. For 99% of human history, figuring out how to find and hide meat before it rots was the ultimate puzzle of survival. But today, the entire game has flipped. The environment changed, but your brain stayed exactly the same as it was in the Ice Age. Now, figuring out how to stop eating all this perfectly preserved food before it slowly kills you is the new ultimate puzzle of survival.